Shalom, welcome back. We are working our way through the Rock of a Sure Foundation. We are in the NazActs Book 3. We're up to chapter 62. So last time we left off discussing the 10 pairs. We got to the 9th. Got the sower of tares, who I believe is sowing the false gospel, the gospel of Paul. And then we got the evangelist, who is sowing the true gospel. And so, this is the Pauline church, this is the true church. And those that buy into the Pauline church, when the 10th comes around, Peter tells us in this section that essentially, because they didn't believe the evangelist, they chose to believe in the sower of tares, that they're going to fall for the Antichrist. And when the real Messiah shows up, instead of knowing to switch over and go to the Messiah, they're not going to, because they didn't believe the evangelist before him. So I find this kind of appropriate to the time that we're in, because for the first time the true gospel is actually being preached, for the first time in a couple thousand years. And there's a lot of people that are resistant to it. Mostly they're resistant to rejecting the apostate Paul, and then of course the dietary demands of the true gospel, which is to stop eating the corpses of dead animals, and many people don't want to do that. So anyway, just realizing that there's going to be a lot of people that are led astray by this 10th pair, Aquila makes this comment: truly there is need of constant teaching, so that we can learn what is true. So that kind of brings us up to Peter's reply that's going to be here at the beginning of chapter 62. So Peter says, "Who is he that is earnest toward instruction, and that studiously inquires into every particular, except him who loves his own soul to salvation, who excuses himself from all the affairs of this world, that he may be able to earnestly hear the word of Yahweh only? He alone is considered wise by the true prophet, who sells all that he has and buys the one true pearl, who understands what is the difference between temporal things and eternal, small and great, men and Yahweh. For he understands what is the eternal hope in presence of the true and good God." Last time I spoke briefly about how there's people who are not enjoying this walk just simply because there's not a lot of fellowship. Yahweh says he's going to take one from a city and two from a town, so there's not it's kind of hard to find a congregation of people, like-minded believers. I do think that we're going to have congregations eventually. There is a movement. There's a lot of people that are actually embracing the things that I talk about on here, not necessarily because of me, but because the message is spread, and now you have more scholarly people getting involved. You have some more talented YouTubers who are better at putting together videos than I am. I do things pretty simple here, but there's a movement. There's people getting involved. The message is spreading, and so I do think eventually there will be congregations. But a lot of these growing pains that we're having of not being able to have large groups of people like you're used to in the church, where you can go to a congregation, have a bunch of people, it's going to change. But for now, it's kind of lonely. It's going to be that way until we get the numbers. But you got to understand the difference between temporal things, this temporary situation, and eternity. And don't lose hope in the loneliness of it. Start trying to meet people online and converse with people and do things that way. It's not ideal right now. We want that face-to-face communication, but we got to start building that. The difference between small things and great things, between men and Yahweh. So don't get focused on the affairs of men and lose sight of what's important. For he understands what is the eternal hope in the presence of the true and good God. So keep your eyes on eternal things. And who thinks that he will receive eternal good things if not the good person? And who is good if not the one who loves Yahweh? But who is he that loves Yahweh save him who knows his wisdom? Whence it comes that he conceives a love for him and venerates him with worthy honor, pouring out hymns and prayers to him, and most pleasantly resting in these and pleasantly resting in these, comma, new clause here, accounts it his greatest loss if at any time he must discuss or do anything else, even for a moment of time. So how many of us are really that convicted? Where you hate even just looking at anything else. Like you don't want to deal with the normal affairs of your life because you're wanting to spend all of your time in prayer and communion with God. I mean, that's I think a pretty lofty ideal to get to that point where you just enjoy fellowshipping with God that much. So he accounts his greatest loss if at any time he must discuss or do anything else for even a moment of time, because in reality the soul, which is filled with the love of Yahweh, can neither look upon anything except what pertains to Yahweh, nor by reason of love of him can be satisfied with meditating upon those things which it knows to be pleasing to him. But those who have not conceived affection for him, nor bear his love lighted up in their mind, are, as it were, placed in darkness and cannot see light. And therefore, even before they begin to learn anything of Yahweh, they immediately faint, as though worn out by labor, and filled with weariness. They are straightway hurried by their own evil habits to those words with which they are pleased. For it is wearisome and annoying to such persons to hear anything about Yahweh, as in a discourse, and they are not content with being enlightened by the law, but rather they are grieved by it. That reminds me of a few people I've met, grieved by the law. While Peter was thus speaking, the day dawned, and behold, one of the disciples of Simon came, crying out, I beseech you, O Peter, receive me, a wretch, who had been deceived by Simon the magician, to whom I gave heed as to a heavenly God, and by reason of these miracles which I saw him perform. But when I heard your discourses, I began to think him a man, and indeed a wicked man nonetheless. When he went out from this, I alone followed him, for I had not yet clearly perceived his impieties. But when he saw me following him, he called me blessed, and led me to his house, and about the middle of the night he said to me, I shall make you better than all men, if you will remain with me even till the end. When I had promised him this, he demanded of me an oath of perseverance, and having got this, he placed upon my shoulders some of the polluted and accursed secret things, that I might carry them, and ordered me to follow him. But when we came to the sea, he went aboard a boat which happened to be there, and took from my neck what he had ordered me to carry, and as he came out a little after, bringing nothing with him, he must have thrown it into the sea. Then he asked me to go with him, saying that he was going to Rome, and that there he would please the people so much that he should be reckoned a god, and publicly gifted with divine honors. Then said he, if you wish to return to this place, I shall send you back, loaded with all riches, and upheld by various services. When I heard this, and saw nothing in him in accordance with this profession, but perceived that he was a magician and a deceiver, I answered, Pardon me, I pray you, I have a pain in my feet, and therefore I am not able to leave Caesarea. Besides, I have a wife and little children, whom I cannot leave by any means. When he heard this, he charged me with sloth, and set out toward Dora, saying, You will be sorry when you hear what glory I shall get in the city of Rome. And after this he set out for Rome, as he said, but I hastily returned to this place, begging you to receive me in repentance, since I was deceived by him. When he who had returned from Simon had thus spoken, Peter ordered him to sit down in the courtyard, and he himself going forth, seeing immense crowds, far more than on the previous day, stood in his usual place, and pointing out him who had come, began to discourse as follows. This man whom I point out to you, brethren, has just come to me, telling me of the wicked practices of Simon, and how he has thrown the implements of his wickedness into the sea, not induced to do so by repentance, but being afraid lest being detected he should be subjected to the public laws. And he asked this man, as he tells me, to remain with him, promising him immense gifts. And when he could not persuade him to do so, he left him, reproaching him for sluggishness, and set out for Rome. When Peter had intimated this to the crowd, the man himself, who had returned from Simon, stood up and began to state to the people everything relating to Simon's crimes. And when they were shocked by the things which they heard that Simon had done by his magical arts, Peter said, "Be not, my brethren, distressed by those things that have been done, but give heed to the future. For what is past is ended, but the things which threaten are dangerous to those who shall fall in with them. For offenses shall never be wanting in this world, so long as the enemy is permitted to act according to his will, in order that the prudent and those who understood his wiles may be conquerors in the contest which he raises against them. But that those who neglect to learn the things that pertain to the salvation of their souls may be taken by him with merited deceptions. Since therefore, as you have heard, Simon has gone forth to preoccupy the ears of the Gentiles who are called to salvation, it is necessary that I also follow upon his track, so that whatever disputations he raises may be corrected by us. But inasmuch as it is right that greater anxiety should be felt concerning you who are already received within the walls of life, for if that which has actually been acquired perish, a positive loss is sustained, while with respect to that which has not yet been acquired, if it can be got, there is so much gain, but if not, the only loss is that there is no gain. In order, therefore, that you may be more and more confirmed in the truth, and the Gentiles who are called to salvation may in no way be prevented by the wickedness of Simon, I have thought good to ordain Zacchaeus as pastor over you, and to remain with you myself for 3 months, and so to go to the Gentiles, for fear that through our delaying longer, and the crimes of Simon stalking in every direction, they would become incurable." At this announcement, all the people wept, hearing that he was going to leave them, and Peter, sympathizing with them himself, also shed tears, and looking up to heaven, he said, "To you, O Yahweh, who has made heaven and earth and all things that are in them, we pour out the prayer of supplication that you will comfort those who take refuge and remain with you in their tribulation. For by reason of the affection that they have towards you, they do love me, who have declared to them your truth. Wherefore guard them with the right hand of your compassion, for neither Zacchaeus nor any other man can be a sufficient guardian to them." When he had said thus, and more to the same effect, he laid his hands upon Zacchaeus and prayed that he might blamelessly discharge the duty of his bishopric. Then he ordained 12 presbyters and 4 deacons, and said, "I have ordained you, this Zacchaeus, as bishop, knowing that he has the fear of God and is expert in the Scriptures. You ought therefore to honor him as holding the place of Messiah, obeying him for your salvation, and knowing that whatsoever honor and whatever injury is done to him redounds to Messiah, and from Messiah to Yahweh. Hear him, therefore, with all attention, and receive from him the doctrine of the faith, and from the presbyters the monitions of life, and from the deacons the order of discipline. Have a religious care of widows, vigorously assist orphans, take pity on the poor, teach the young to be chaste, and in a word, sustain one another as circumstances shall demand. Worship Yahweh, who created heaven and earth, believe in Messiah, love one another, be compassionate to all, and fulfill charity not only in word, but in act and deed." When he had given them these and such like precepts, he made proclamation to the people, saying, "Since I have resolved to stay 3 months with you, if anyone desires it, let him be baptized, that, stripped of his former evils, he may, for the future, in consequence of his own conduct, become heir of heavenly blessings, as a reward for his good actions. Whosoever will, then, let him come to Zacchaeus, and give his name to him, and let him hear from him the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Let him commit to frequent fastings, and approve himself in all things, that at the end of these 3 months he may be baptized on the day of Passover. But every one of you shall be baptized in ever-flowing waters, in the name of the Son of God being invoked over him, he being the first anointed with oil sanctified by prayer, that so at length, being consecrated by these things, he may obtain a perception of holy things. And when he had spoken at length on the subject of baptism, he dismissed the crowd and betook himself to the usual place of abode. There, while the 12 stood around him, namely Zacchaeus and Sophanius, Joseph and Micah, Eleazar and Phinehas, Lazarus and Eleazar, I, Clement, Nicodemus, Niceta, and Aquila. He addressed us to the following effect: Let us, my brethren, consider what is right. For it is our duty to bring some help to the Gentiles, which are called to salvation. You have yourselves heard that Simon has set out, wishing to anticipate our journey. Him we should have followed step by step, that wheresoever he tries to subvert any, we might immediately confute him. But since it appears to me to be unjust to forsake those who have been already converted to God, and to bestow our care upon those who are still afar off, I think it right that I should remain 3 months with those in this city who have been turned to the faith, and should strengthen them, and yet that we should not neglect those who are still far off, that perhaps, if they be long infected with the power of pernicious doctrine, it may be difficult to recover them. Therefore I wish only, however, if you also think it right, that for Zacchaeus, whom we have now ordained bishop, Benjamin the son of Saba be substituted, and for Clement, whom I am resolved to have always by me, because coming from the Gentiles he has a great desire to hear the word of God, there might be substituted Hananiah the son of Sapphira, and for Nicetas and Aquila, who have been but lately converted to the faith of Messiah, Robel the brother of Zacchaeus, and Zechariah the builder. And thus then he completed the number 12 by introducing 4 in the place of 4, so that we might be with him all the time, I, Clement, Niceta, and Aquila. He said to those 12, I wish you the day after tomorrow to proceed to the Gentiles, and to follow them in the footsteps of Simon, that you may inform me of all his proceedings. You will also inquire diligently the sentiments of everyone, and announce to them that I shall come to them without delay, and in short, in all places instruct the Gentiles to expect my coming. When he had spoken these things and others to the same effect, he said, You also, my brethren, if you have anything to say to these things, say on, that perhaps it might not write what seems good to me alone. Then all with one voice applauding him said, We ask you rather to arrange everything according to your own judgment, and to order what seems good to yourself. For this we think to be the perfect work of piety, if we fulfill what you command. And after they said these things, he sent for Benjamin, Hananiah, Robel, and Zechariah, and when they came, in like manner as was seemly, he also spoke with them. Therefore, on the day appointed, when they had ranged themselves before Peter, they said, Do not think, O Peter, that it is small grief to us that we are to be deprived of the privilege of hearing you for 3 months. But since it is good for us to do whatever you order, we shall most readily obey. We shall always remain in our hearts the remembrance of your faiths, and so we set out actively as you have commanded us. Then he, having poured out a prayer to Yahweh for them, dismissed them, and when those 12 who had been sent forward had gone, Peter entered according to custom, and stood in the place of disputation, and a multitude of people had come together, even a larger number than usual, and all with tears gazed upon him by reason of what they had heard from him the day before, that he was about to go forth on account of Simon. Then seeing them weeping, he himself was also similarly affected, although he endeavored to conceal and restrain his tears. But the trembling of his voice and the interruption of his discourse betrayed that he was distressed by similar emotion. However, rubbing his face with his hand, he said, Be of good courage, my brethren, and comfort your sorrowful hearts by means of counsel, referring all things to God, whose will alone is to be fulfilled and preferred in all things. For let us suppose for a moment that by reason of the affection that we have towards you, we shall act against his will and remain with you. Is he not able, by sending death upon us, to appoint me a longer separation from you, and therefore it is better for us to carry out this shorter separation with his will, as those to whom it is prescribed to obey God in all things. Hence you also ought to obey him with like submission, inasmuch as you love me, from no other reason than on account of your love of him. As friends of God, therefore, acquiesce in his will, but also judge yourselves what is right. Would it not have seemed wicked if, when Simon was deceiving you, I had been detained by the brethren in Jerusalem, and had not come to you? And that although you had Zacchaeus among you, a good and eloquent man. So now also consider that it would be wicked if, when Simon has gone forth to assail the Gentiles who are wholly without a defender, I should be detained by you, and should not follow him. Wherefore let us see to it that we are not, by an unreasonable affection, accomplish the will of the wicked one. Meanwhile I shall remain with you 3 months, as I promised. Be you constant in hearing the word, and at the end of that time, if any are able and willing to follow us, they may do so, if duty will admit of it. And when I say, if duty will admit, I mean that no one by his departure must sadden anyone who ought not to be saddened, as by leaving parents who ought not to be left, or a faithful wife, or any other person to whom he is bound to afford comfort for God's sake. Meanwhile, disputing and teaching day by day, he filled up the time appointed with the labor of teaching, and when Passover arrived, upward of 10,000 were baptized. But in those days a letter was received from the brethren who had gone before, in which were detailed the crimes of Simon, how going from city to city he was deceiving multitudes, and everywhere maligning Peter, so that when he should come no one would afford him a hearing. For he asserted that Peter was a magician, a godless man, injurious, cunning, ignorant, and professing impossible things. For, says he asserts that the dead shall rise again, which is impossible. But if anyone attempts to confute him, he is cut off by secret snares by him, through means of his attendants. Wherefore I also, says he, when I had vanquished him and triumphed over him, fled for fear of his snares, lest he should destroy me by incantations, or compass my death by plots. They intimated also that he mainly stayed at Tryphilus. Peter therefore ordered the letter to be read to the people, and after the reading of it he addressed them and gave them full instructions about everything, but especially that they should obey Zacchaeus, whom he had ordained bishop over them. Also he commended the presbyters and the deacons to the people, and not less the people to them. And then, announcing that he should spend the winter in Tryphilus, he said, I commend you to the grace of God, being about to depart tomorrow with God's will. But during the whole 3 months which he spent at Caesarea, for the sake of instruction, whatever he discoursed of in the presence of the people in the daytime, he explained more fully and perfectly in the night, and in private to us, and more faithful and completely approved by him. And at the same time he commanded me, because he understood that I carefully stored in my memory what I heard, to commit to writing whatever seemed worthy of record, and to send it to you, my master James, as also I did, in obedience to his command. The first book, therefore, of those I formerly sent to you contains an account of the true prophet and the peculiarity of the understanding of the law, according to what the tradition of Moses teaches. The second contains the account of the primal, and whether there be one or many, and that the law of the Hebrews knows what immensity is. The third concerning God and those things that have been ordained by him. The fourth, that though there are many that are called gods, there is but one true God, according to the testimonies of the Scriptures. The fifth, that there are two heavens, one of which is that visible expanse which shall pass away, and the other is the eternal and invisible. The sixth, concerning good and evil, and that all things are subjected to good by the Father, and why and how and whence evil is, and that it cooperates with good, but not with good purpose, and what are the signs of good, and what those of evil, and what is the difference between duality and conjunction. The seventh, what are the things which the 12 apostles treated off in the presence of the people in the temple. The eighth, concerning the words of the teacher, that he is a prophet, and that he did not speak contradictory, although it may seem so, and along with them he gave the explanation of them. The ninth, that the law which was given by God is just and perfect, and that it alone can make pure. the 10th concerning the carnal birth of man, and concerning the generation which is by baptism, and what is the succession of carnal seed in man, and what is the account of his soul, and how the free will is in it, which, seeing it is not begotten but made, could not be immovable from good. Concerning these several subjects, therefore, whatever Peter discoursed at Caesarea, according to his command, as I have said, I sent to you written in 10 volumes. But on the next day, as have been determined, we set out from Caesarea with some faithful men who had resolved to accompany Peter. And so that brings us to the end of Book 3. And so next time we will pick up with Book 4. Shalom.